At exactly 2:10 hours on the morning of June 7, 2026, a modified Shahed 136 attack drone detonated its warhead inside the container reception building of the Centralized Spent Nuclear Fuel Storage Facility at Buriakivka, Kiev Oblast. The drone had flown 340 kilometers through the dark, navigated around 3 S-300 radar coverage cones, pre-programmed to coordinates precise to 3 meters. It did not arrive at a military installation or an ammunition depot. It arrived at a building that could hold enough cesium-137 and strontium-90 to contaminate 400 square kilometers of European farmland for 300 years. The building was empty of active spent fuel. Radiation stayed within background parameters. The fire, 40 square meters, was out in 54 minutes. What Russia had just done was not going to be measured in rads. It was going to be measured in what happened over the next 8 hours and 43 minutes, a sequence that brought the world closer to direct NATO-Russia combat than anything since the Cuban Missile Crisis, stopped ultimately by a 28-second delay inserted into a Russian nuclear relay node by a U.S. cyber command team in Warsaw. The attack was not spontaneous. At 23:45 on June 6th, 2 hours and 25 minutes before Buriakivka, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces had completed the largest long-range strike package of the war. Acting on ISR data from US MQ-9 Reaper assets and UK-supplied SIGINT, Ukrainian forces hit St. Petersburg, Putin's hometown, where Russia's political and economic leadership had gathered for the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. The package included 376 attack drones and a cluster of Neptune anti-ship missiles reprofiled for land attack. Targets: the Kirishi oil refinery on the Neva River Delta, 3 pipeline compressor stations, and the Kronstadt Naval Logistics Base, primary supply hub for the entire Baltic fleet. Russian air defense systems activated across a 200-kilometer arc. Moscow claimed all 376 drones intercepted. The real number shot down was 204. The rest either reached their targets or detonated close enough to count. 6 oil storage tanks at Kirishi were burning. Kronstadt had taken 2 direct hits on fuel infrastructure. In the Kremlin war room, the retaliation calculation was already running. The Buriakivka targeting order did not come from a battlefield commander. It came from the 8th Directorate of the Russian Armed Forces General Staff, the unit that runs strategic information operations. NSA SIGINT intercepts, shared under UK-USA protocols with GCHQ, CSE, ASD, and GCSB, confirmed the targeting decision used satellite reconnaissance data collected 4 days before the strike. This was planned while ceasefire diplomacy was still running. A pre-prepared retaliatory option, held in reserve, waiting. At 4:14, while NATO leaders were still processing the Chernobyl strike, a Ukrainian naval drone operator in the Black Sea sector sent a contact report that would become the second piece of what analysts now describe as Russia's 3-phase escalation sequence. 2 Ukrainian State Emergency Service search and rescue vessels, call signs Dnipro-7 and Bu-3, were hit in rapid succession by remote-guided Shahed drones in the northwestern Black Sea. They were not warships. Both were unarmed emergency response vessels operating under a humanitarian framework agreed at the Istanbul talks. Both carried IAEA observer transponders. Both went down. Dnipro-7 sank in 11 minutes. 4 Ukrainian emergency responders died. 14 were missing. That same night, Russian forces launched 236 drones against Ukrainian cities, the largest overnight barrage in 4 months. Put those 3 events together: a nuclear site strike, a maritime attack on civilian vessels, and a mass drone campaign all within 6 hours, and the shape of the Russian plan becomes clear. It was designed to flood the NATO news cycle and force every allied foreign ministry to triage emergencies, rather than coordinate a response. Every intelligence briefer in every capital recognized the technique. Recognizing it did not make it less effective. At 6 o'clock, the NSA SIGINT network detected a significant anomaly in encrypted traffic from Russia's 12th Main Directorate of the Ministry of Defense, the directorate that manages Russia's nuclear arsenal. The traffic signature matched Category 3 pre-release coordination protocols from Russia's 2022 nuclear signaling exercises over Kaliningrad. 3 Iskander-M ballistic missile brigade command nodes along the Russian-Belarusian border were receiving coordinated encrypted traffic from a 12th Directorate relay at Kozelsk. This was not a launch authorization, not even close, but it was 3 alert levels closer to 1 than it had been 12 hours before. At Offutt Air Force Base, the electromagnetic signature of U.S. Strategic Command raising its readiness posture was picked up within minutes by Russian Lacrosse-class radar satellites. Both sides were now tracking each other in real time. At 6:44, the Joint Chiefs convened a secure flag session. Options on the table ranged from a formal Article 5 consultation request to a controlled cyber response that would demonstrate capability without firing a shot. The President approved the cyber option at 7:09. Execution authority reached U.S. Cyber Command's Persistent Engagement Unit at 7:14. The operation kicked off at 7:22. Codename ARDENT CLOCK. The target was the encrypted authentication handshake infrastructure connecting Russia's 12th Main Directorate Kozelsk node to the 3 Iskander Brigade command stations along the Belarusian border. ARDENT CLOCK inserted a 28-second latency delay into the authorization confirmation protocol. Invisible in normal operations, it would only surface in an actual launch authorization sequence where a 28-second gap in authentication staging breaks the timing synchronization required for a coordinated first strike release. 28 seconds. Barely enough time to read a short message. In a launch-on-warning scenario, where decisions are made in under 3 minutes and timing precision runs to milliseconds, a 28-second gap in the authentication chain is not an inconvenience. It is a veto. It does not break anything. It just slows the sequence down to a speed where a human being has to make a deliberate choice. At 7:25, 2 B-21 Raider stealth bombers on a declared deterrence patrol over the North Sea were quietly rerouted to a holding orbit over the southern Baltic, 180 kilometers from Kaliningrad. Every S-400 battery from Pskov to Königsberg picked up the return on radar. Every Russian ELINT collector on the Baltic coast logged the signature. No interceptors were scrambled. None were close enough. The B-21 rarely shows itself. When it does, there is nothing ambiguous about the message. At 8:15, an encrypted message came from the Kremlin through the Emergency Nuclear Risk Reduction Center, the nuclear hotline between Moscow and Washington. 3 sentences. The content has never been declassified. What followed in the next 47 minutes is on record. The B-21 Raiders returned to their declared North Sea patrol route. SIGINT traffic from the 12th Main Directorate dropped to baseline within 22 minutes, and at 08:47, U.S. Stratcom reversed its elevated posture. The world had spent 8 hours and 43 minutes in a crisis that the UN, the IAEA, and the Geneva ceasefire framework had no tools to stop. The IAEA had no enforcement authority. The Security Council could not convene without a Russian veto. What ended it was a 28-second delay in a relay node, 2 bombers flying circles over the Baltic, and 3 sentences that will stay classified for 50 years. The Buriakivka facility has been inspected by an IAEA team. The container reception building is destroyed. Radiation is normal. The Black Sea vessels are on the seabed. The 4 Ukrainian emergency responders killed aboard those ships have been named. Their funerals were attended by no world leaders. Russia has not officially acknowledged either strike. In Warsaw, a 28-second authentication delay is still embedded in Russia's nuclear relay architecture. The people who put it there have said nothing publicly. That is, of course, the point. Nuclear deterrence in 2026 looks nothing like the Cold War version. It runs on pre-positioned cyber access, visible bomber presence, and timing gaps most people do not know exist. June 7th exposed that architecture more clearly than anything in years. The world was not about to end, but it got significantly closer than the official statements suggest, and the gap between what the headlines reported and what actually happened is wider than most people realize. The real question coming out of June 7th is not whether these systems held this time. It is how many more rounds they can absorb before 28 seconds stops being enough. Moscow's calculation was logical: hit something nuclear, create 3 simultaneous crises, wait for NATO to fracture. What they could not account for was a clock already running inside their own command network. The rules of this conflict are not written in Geneva. They are set in authentication delays, radar returns, and the precise flight path of a stealth bomber. For now, the West holds that edge. What would you do if you knew exactly how close it got? Drop it in the comments. Because the gap between what the headline said and what actually happened on June 7th is not small. This is Force Vector. Stay sharp.